Hey, it's Mo, your host here at Real Relationship, Real Revenue, and I've got just a great guest for you today and for the next four episodes. It's Tyler Sweatt. I met Tyler when he was a big time strategy consultant at Toffler Associates, doing some very, very cutting edge long range planning for some of the largest organizations in the world. And Tyler's now VP of Growth at Second Front. More on that later. But he just is one of those people that I just latched onto in a training, loved him to death, and we've kept in touch ever since. And I just, yeah, he's just so good. In this episode, I think it's interesting when you just have interesting people on the show, you never know where something's going to go, and they always go somewhere great. And this episode's no different. Tyler and I end up talking about some very important realizations that he had when he was in the military, how he has used those since then. And we end up in this episode talking about the three major areas that you can think about improving your skills in. So no matter what your expertise, these three things are really, really important. And we get into it and exactly what you do to improve your skills in each of the three areas. All right. So before we get into it, know that if you're stretched for time and if you would like some ways to deepen relationships with your prospects and your clients that don't take a lot of time, we've got an amazing thought piece for you. It's called High Impact Relationship Deepeners. It's got 7 ways you can deepen relationships, 5 minutes each or less, very fast, very high impact. And you get that by heading over to growbigplaybook.com. Growbigplaybook.com. Sign up there, you get the download right away. Wrote it myself with the help of the team. Really, really powerful stuff with science and steps on exactly how you implement each of the 7 methods. All right, here is Tyler Sweatt. Hey everybody, you know who I am. It's Mo, and I'm here, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Super excited today. I've got Tyler Sweatt. He's VP of Growth at Second Front. We'll weave in what the awesomeness of his organization is as we go through. But Tyler, you're one of those people. Man, I don't even remember when it was. We were still in person. It was pre-pandemic. I can't remember in this one if I taught the class or if I was just sitting in. I think I was sitting in.
Sitting in. You were sitting
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
So we were at a public training. You were there with some of your friends at the time. You're at Toffler Associates, big strategy, big brain consulting firm. And Tyler, I just remember I like walked into the side of the room and sat in on the other side. You're wrapping up our facilitator was wrapping up an activity, and you said something, and I don't even remember what it was, but I'm like, ooh, I like that guy. And then I like cornered you on the break and we became fast friends, and here we are on the show. So man, thanks for, I don't know what thing you said that day, but it was like you dropped some knowledge.
Yeah, I don't remember. I tell you, and I say this often, I think I say this every time we talk, like that training was one of the most transformative sort of experiences for me in my progression from like business development, sales, and growth and all that. Because it was just so easy to latch it all together. So my mind was going, 1,000 miles an hour. I'm like, hey, I could apply this here and apply that there.
Yeah.
So it was a good week.
Well, and now, you were so successful at Toffler. Now you've gone off and you've started a couple companies, and you're just like, you're one of these people that has big, bold ideas and you find ways to get there. And it's always impressed me. So that leads us to our first question, our first big meaty one, because I don't know the answer to this. I'm so excited to have you say this. But when, if you track back, when was like the moment when you realized this business development thing is a great thing? It's positive. It's a win for all. And, and you wanted to dedicate at least a fractional part of your life to it. Go back and tell me that story.
So it's a really good question. So when I transitioned out of the military, I admittedly had no idea what I wanted to do professionally. Like I had sort of been conditioned at college that, hey, you should go get an MBA. Like I grew up, an hour and a half outside of New York City. So everybody wanted to get into finance or investment banking.
Yep.
Like the market had collapsed while I was in the military. So all of my preconceived, conceptions about what I was going to do when I got out had sort of changed. So I went as middle of the road as humanly possible, joined a consulting firm. So Went was like, I'm going to punch my ticket at Deloitte. I'm going to figure out this business thing. And then what I realized sort of conceptually was that there's, at its core in an organization, there are 2 functions. There's value creation and there's value protection. and you got to figure out where do you want to be on which side or the other. Can you move back and forth? Sure. Like, is there an argument about like, hey, leaders should be cross functional? Sure. I don't mean it like mutually exclusive, but from a career path standpoint, like functional alignment, I think that holds pretty true.
Yeah.
And I realized like, hey, the easiest way to probably move up as a young guy at a big consulting firm or in a market I didn't really understand was start to figure out what are those value levers, how are people making decision, and how are they buying things, how are they making investment decisions. And that was the easiest thing for me to correlate to the military. How to build relationships, how to establish trust and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So honestly, it was like the easiest one step for me to do. And I understood, hey, I've got to figure out how people's brains tick, how organizations tick, and then figure out how to go that way.
Yeah, I love I hadn't ever thought of it that way, but the value protection, there's all kinds of roles, which is on the servicing side, doing things, doing a great job, right? And all
Yep.
of our clientele sort of has a little bit a foot, part of their body, one foot in sort of each. I've got to deliver on the things that have been purchased, but I've got to find the next person to purchase it. And
Yeah.
what I found is the people that put more of their emphasis on the value creation side, or in our world, the business development, the blaze a new trail, find the new person, develop the relationship. Those are the people that rise up the fastest because it's harder to do. It's scarier. It's a lot easier to
It's
just
definitely
use your
riskier.
expertise than to use your expertise with new people. And
Yeah.
so keep going deeper. So not that we'll do this exactly in order of your career or anything, but when you think about the value creation side, what does that mean to you? How do you blaze that trail? Because I've
Yeah.
I've seen you be ridiculously successful. So anyway, go deeper on that.
Yeah. So it's been a series of career choices that I made that were designed to expose me to new learning,
Mm,
new, industry verticals, new types of organizations, things like that. So Deloitte for me was like the ground floor. I found a couple partners that I really admired and was like, hey, I will staple binders and get you coffee. Let me just sit in the room while you're working deals so I can understand and I can watch and just see how it works.
So let me jump in and we'll get back to you. So
Yeah,
you were like,
please.
it sounds to me, and I know you, so I know the answer, but I want to convey this to everybody else. The entire time, your primary thing isn't like, how do I get from level 7.2 to 8.3 or whatever people have in their broadband systems? Your entire focus was, I want to learn stuff.
Yeah,
And it's this value creation thing I want to learn. Okay, so keep
100%.
going.
100%. And I mean, that exact segue is what led me to Toffler.
Ah,
So Toffler Associates, I hadn't heard about them, got connected to them, had some conversations, understood how they looked at the market, which was like intentionally orthogonal. Like they came at the market a different way. It
yep,
was really interesting.
yep.
Like a big focus on bringing methodologies from one industry into another and seeing what happens, and like leveraging Alan Heidi Toffler's seminal work, but like in a really practical way. And it gave me the opportunity to go from healthcare to pharmaceuticals to aerospace and defense to national security to finance. Like from a consulting standpoint, that was invaluable. And Toffler at the time was a relatively small organization, so it was sort of like an early business development person's dream because you could build your own portfolio.
Mm,
So I came in on like a single project. By the time I left, we sort of had an entire little market focus around security and emerging technology, which had afforded me the opportunity, A, to build my own technical gravitas and go learn a whole bunch more about really interesting technologies.
yep.
But I think more importantly, and I'll go back to that Deloitte, like I want to be in the room. It allowed me to be in the room for a lot of really interesting strategic decisions. How was a hospitality organization going to bring in digital currency? How was a major bank going to go through this massive organizational change and think about future of work? How was a huge aerospace company going to build an M&A strategy that accounted for a ton of really weird emerging technologies and strategic surprise. The government, how are they going to do some really interesting national security challenges? But then I was able to step back and bring that all together and start to build my own methodologies on how I think about problems and scenarios. And with that, that's a great way to create curiosity because it essentially gives me it's my own assets and artifacts. I
Yep.
have all these stories now. Hey, here's how this organization thought about it. And I can use that as a gift to get and share when I'm talking. So it's actually made me a way better business development person because I have all this really interesting fodder and context that I can share. And then it was all about where do I want to go? And by the time I'd spent 7 years at Toffler, 8 years at Toffler, my hypothesis was if we want to be on the forefront of change, it's less about boardrooms and Fortune ones and fives, and it's more about like five guys in a garage in Silicon Valley who convinced some fund to give them $5 million. Like, I want to be there.
Yeah.
So I spun out, started a company to go do that and sort of be the glue in between startups and the government and bigger corporations, and was linking it all together and doing some consulting. That ended up getting bought by one of our clients 9 months in, which was a fun story. Always hire an accountant. We had not hired an accountant yet. We were running everything off a ledger. And when the law firm sent the documents over, and they're like, "We'd like to open a data room," and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to make this easy for you. I can just click export. Like, I don't have any. I don't have any.
There's no data room.
There's no data room here." But like that let me then like really dig in deep and double down on some of
Yeah.
like the artificial intelligence work I'd been doing, and built that company up, punched them into the market we wanted to punch them in at, helped build them an advisory board that I still sit on. Love that company. And the CTO from Second Front Systems gave me a call with the CEO and said, "Hey, we're going to try to solve this really hard problem." And I said to him, I was like, "I don't know if we can do it, but this sounds like an unbelievable opportunity and it's going to
Yep.
be fun." And I said, "Hey, I'll start in a week. This sounds great."
I love it. So I want to let's wrap up this episode with this because I think there's a nice ending that I think could really help the audience.
Yeah.
So the thing that if I'm in the audience right now, Tyler, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, how in the world could I do that? Right? Like, because you're highly ambitious and you're highly risk taking, and it's paid off really, really, really well for you. But a lot of people are like, whoa, that seems like a bit much. But I think there's a lesson here around stretching outside your comfort zone in seems like three domains. One is an expert around some kind of process or deep technical expertise, an expertise around different industries and the language and the pattern, like that's clearly part of what you've
Yeah.
done. And then the third is an expertise around growth skills. You
Yeah.
mentioned give to gets. We'll get into that in a future episode. Gravitas, creating curiosity, a bunch of stuff that obviously you and I know from the
Yeah.
Grow Big and the snowball system.
Yep.
But there are three different main expertises, and you're always stretching outside your comfort zone, I think, in those three. So let's say somebody's like you now. Let's just say they're wherever they're at in their career, they go, man, I'm good at one of those three, or maybe two. But what would your advice be to somebody that wants to continue to stretch and learn and add to their skill set?
Yeah, I think the time there's probably been no better time than now. You've got COVID, so most people are working from home, which in theory gives you some extra hours during the day, if we're being honest with everybody.
Yep.
Everything's online right now, right? Like you can give yourself an MBA by watching YouTube videos
Yeah.
and some free or the cheap Coursera type stuff.
Yes.
So I would think about, those three sort of circles you talked about, Mo, right? Like the technical expertise, the industry understanding, and sort of the growth skills.
Yep.
And think about those as a Venn diagram.
Yep.
And you don't need to be everything in all of them.
Yep.
You're trying to find some overlap. So, find podcasts, watch different, YouTube channels, read books. One of the big things I'm pushing myself on right now is like deep financial understanding of like a bunch of interesting like M&A stuff that I don't fully admittedly understand, like at a level that I want to. So like I've got a couple mailers that I read every single day, and I have a discussion with one of my mentors about, once a week, and just trying to learn a little bit more. So if nothing else, I've got one or two things that I can start to use and implement and bring into my day. So
Yep.
that's what I do. Break it down, start small, and just push yourself to think a little bit differently. But always, when you're learning, you should always have a practical application be the last part of that learning. How can I bring this into my day and test it? Because life is the scientific method. You come up with a bunch of great ideas, they don't matter unless you test them. So get out there and test it.
I love it, Tyler. So I'll synthesize, and then I'll ask where people can learn more about you. But what I love about that is, and I'll even simplify it for everybody. It sounds like you pick one thing. I'm going to learn this one thing over these next couple weeks, months, or whatever. I do the same thing. Like I'm going super deep on. I'm a big bull around Tesla and battery technology and the AI that they're building. And man, I'm going crazy deep into artificial intelligence, battery technology, production ramp, all kinds of stuff around that. And once you get into that, you find other stuff and other stuff and other stuff. So thing one is like focus on an area. And mine's cheated a little bit because it's oriented around Tesla, but so there's a few areas in there, but it's pretty cool. So you focus on one area, and then I loved your second piece for everybody listening around, find a practical way. Like how can I take a nugget from that and try it in the next week and continue to build your skill set? Because here's the thing. If somebody is focused on value creation, their career is going to rise faster than any other way. A. B, if you're always building those three areas you talked about, Tyler, technical, industry, and growth skills especially, then you're going to rise up faster than everybody else. And the third thing is you're going to have a bigger impact on the world if you're somebody that's doing those things than sort of sitting back and letting the world happen to them.
They're highly transferable skills too. It's going to give you more mobility as well.
Yes,
not just vertical, but also horizontal across different market segments and industries. Yeah, it's great.
I love it. Okay, awesome. Where should people go to reach out to you to learn more about Second Front, what you do, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, secondfront.com at the website. Find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out if I can help connect people, introduce people. Happy to do it.
Cool. Tyler, thanks for being on the show. And everybody, don't forget all the normal stuff. Make sure you subscribe and follow and turn those notifications on so it blows up your phone when new episodes come in, because we've got 4 more coming with Tyler, and I can already tell you they're going to be awesome. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Mo.
Hey everybody, it's Mo, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm with Tyler Sweatt. He is VP of Growth for Second Front, and they do super cool, complicated things, solving problems hardly anybody's doing. He's going to probably weave that into the episode. Tyler, awesome episode that was the one right before this on how our audience can think about how to grow their skills, how to grow their skill set so they have the biggest impact on the world and the biggest impact on themselves positively. So folks, if you didn't check that out, go back one episode and check it out. But Tyler, where I want to dig into this one is, I think this is going to be fun. What's your personal definition of business development?
Yeah. So it definitely ties back to the last episode. It's value creation, right? And I mean, it's even more easy for me now being in like a venture software company.
Yep.
You are either building a product or selling a product. And ultimately you're increasing your valuation, right? It is like the most simple and pure value creation, because startups you see it in the news all the time, raised X amount of money at this valuation, that value. You are literally assessed by the value you create. So I like my title of growth at Second Front is intentional. I didn't want it to be VP of business development. I didn't want it to be VP of just sales, because it's not just that. It is the thinking about what is often referred to as like revenue operations. But that first time a customer touches a piece of marketing or is inquiring about the company, hits the website, hears about it, thinks about it, that entire journey all the way through, creating curiosity, having them be a skeptic, getting that conversion, whatever your industry is, you're going to have different terms, but it's the same thing.
Yep.
Someone's interested. How do I turn them into a paying customer and get into renewals and all of that? That entire spectrum, that's growth. Continue to do that at scale.
So, okay, this is awesome because I want to dig into this because we haven't talked about this explicitly on many of the episodes at all, if any, I can think of, and I'm running through 200 plus in my mind. But so this could be really valuable. So you're thinking about business development as value creation. You just painted a picture of everything from word of mouth. I just checked out the website all the way up to paying customer and expansion from there. My view on that whole thing is that you can't help somebody significantly until they hire you. So this whole value creation thing is important. You want to be helpful, you want to create curiosity, but to truly help somebody, they have to sign a contract or whatever and start and pay you some money. So anyway, that entire spectrum, can you give us your viewpoint on how you think about it, how you break it down, how you add value and you're helpful and you make the world a better place all the way through it, but very purposefully, you're moving people through a journey to be able to help them more each step of the way.
Yeah. So there's sort of two tracks. There is that journey you're talking about that's, hit the website, maybe stop by a booth at a conference, met somebody from the company somewhere. So, we're developing content that's helping our target market segment with problems we know they're having because we had the same problems.
Yep.
And everybody's having a problem. Like it's complicated to be a startup right now. It's complicated to work with the government. So we've got content and webinars and, we host virtual events to network and bring people together. And so we put a lot of good out that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's great from a branding standpoint. That does some lead generation for us, and that is an ongoing, continuing thing. So those are not, a super focused kind of give to get, but that's on that front end. It's a give to get for lead generation, prospecting. There's calls to action, everything you think about from a digital marketing standpoint. Once they hit the pipeline, our rule is high velocity in, high velocity out. If they are not a fit, we should be able to tell them they are not a fit. First touch point. If we can't do that, we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
And I want no friction and no inefficiency in our pipeline. So once we have a sales prospect and it is qualified, it is a target, and that target is worked quickly. And if it's taken longer than 2 or 3 weeks, then we either need to bring in someone else to work it or pull back out. Because like I said, I want to continue sort of, if you think about plowing the field, like that field is continuing to get plowed. And the second it's time to harvest crops, those got to get harvested.
So let me ask this, because I think this is really powerful. So put your mind in the shoe of a high-end professional, a lawyer, a consultant. Obviously, you've been a consultant in a prior life in a couple places, but then also people that are running marketing, that are running BD at large outsourcers, healthcare companies, whatever.
Yeah.
So if you had to give people one pro ninja tip, so this is from the secret book of Tyler Sweatt, like nobody else knows. You've never shared this before.
Director's cut.
Yeah, this is director's cut. We're dropping people right into the meaty part, right? So if you had to give one pro ninja tip for sort of the ongoing, the websites, the booth, the referrals, the webinars, all the sort of the what some people might call marketing, obviously lead gen is what we've called it in Snowball System and Grow Big Training. So if you had to give one pro ninja tip for that, and then also one pro ninja tip for pure business development, they're now a prospect, we're having conversations. What would be your number one top secret Tyler Sweatt book of Tyler pro ninja tip for each one of those?
Yeah. So I have a counterpart in Second Front who says this all the time, right? Measure what matters. Mm-hmm. So for the marketing and thinking about lead gen and stuff, there is an infinite list of metrics you can capture. More metrics is not always better. Figure out and go slow to go fast. Figure out the right, 2 to 3 metrics that are going to be the indicators you need and focus on them. They can shift every quarter. Heck, they could shift every month depending on your business cycle and all of that. But orient on those. That'll make everything easier. And then you can start to systematize and all of that.
Yep. And can I jump in? I think sometimes the non-traditional metrics are the best. When I send out my weekly newsletter, there's all these stuff we can look at the background of open rates and all that.
Open rate and click rate and read-through rate.
But who knows what that is, because somebody might forward the email to 100 people. You never even know, but that's the most valuable thing. So what I look at is how many people replied to it. because we answer every reply.
Yep.
So like, and those are more like awesome thing, or sometimes they're this long, I sent this to my husband. I think could you help me? Like, so I just look at how many people reply because I feel like that's what tells me it's more anecdotal. It might not be perfect
No, that's
scientifically, but
great. It's we look at referral. Like a referral
yes,
is a huge metric for us. Like, hey, you shared this. Hey, you
yes,
introduced
yes,
like the referral's a huge indicator
yes,
of stickiness and product market fit and
yes.
traction, like all of that. Yeah,
Perfect. So
huge fan of
everybody,
that.
we'll put a bow on that. So on the marketing side, we just like pick. I loved your advice, Tyler. Like pick one metric, and then I think we're both saying it might not be the normal thing everybody else does, right? It might be a little more squishy, but that's okay. All
Yeah,
right.
if you try to optimize for like 7 metrics, you're going to waste all your time optimizing like in Excel, and you're not actually going to be doing marketing or lead gen.
I love it, man. God, that's such great advice. Okay, so now what's your super top secret pro ninja tip? I'm like using lots
Yeah.
of adjectives
No,
on the
no.
pipeline, on the BD conversations.
Yeah. So you got to think about business development, not from your own internal process. You got to think about it from the customer's buying process. And how
Yeah.
can you remove as much friction as humanly possible from the customer's side? Everybody focuses on like, hey, I've got all this great software that like lets me send a quote automatically and lets me send an invoice automatically and sends 87 configurations of a DocuSign document, and the customer has to opt in here and opt out. Nobody wants to do that. Like, you're losing people after 2 clicks right now. Like, look at software applications. Look at the startup community. Look at your iPhone. Couple clicks and you can do anything. Why should I have to click through 87 links in order to buy from you and go through or use some weird virtual connection tool that your company uses that I have to download on my laptop in order to talk to you? Get rid of as much of that as humanly possible and make it easy. People should be able to go to your website, understand your pricing scheme, understand what it is you sell. 1 or 2 touches, you should be able to convert. At least that should be an aspirational goal.
Tyler, I love it. So if I'm you talked about the software side, that can work with outsourcing companies, big quotes, all that stuff. If we think of the professional services, because we have a lot of professionals that listen and watch the
Yeah,
show, those could be things like making it really easy to set up the next meeting. Set it up in the meeting you're at. Don't
you
say, "Oh, well,
definitely should be
I
setting
need
it up in the
17
meeting you're
options."
at.
No,
Yeah,
just like pull out your outlook and say, "Hey, this would be faster if we all just figured out our next meeting now." Make your pricing consistent so you can just say it on the
just
call as
make it
opposed to let me
logical.
work up a quote. Like just
Yeah,
say, hey, I think it's about this. Does that work?
yep,
Like
yep.
there's so many ways to remove friction, and I love it as you. Gosh, it makes me think in in our fancy grow big materials, the designing a better buying process
Yep.
is the tagline
Oh yeah,
for a reason, because if we're always thinking about the buyer and make it easy for them as opposed to us and selling, obviously if you're watching on audio, I air quoted that because it's negative. But if we can instead focus on a positive buying experience, an easy one. I loved how you used that word, make it easy. That's killer.
yeah.
Your closing thoughts on that on these things?
I think that's both of those are things you can continue to look at, right? They're not single point in time. Hey, you've
Yep.
solved it and you're done. But if you're thinking about it that way, then you're measuring how people are engaging with you. So you're customer centric. You're bringing in design principles,
Yep.
and that's gonna be super useful and valuable for you in whatever you do.
Yep, Tyler, amazing show. I just gave this one an A plus plus plus. That's 3 pluses. So you got a gold star. You can
We're
tell your
trending
family
up.
tonight. It's gonna be great. Um, so where should people go if they want to hear more about you, Second Front? Where should they connect?
Come to www.secondfront.com to learn more about the company and some of the awesome stuff we're working on. Uh, shameless plug, if you're a DevOps engineer, we are definitely hiring right now. And then find me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to get a hold of me, and happy to connect and share some thoughts and ideas.
Awesome. And we'll put those links down in the show notes so it makes it super easy. Tyler, man, thanks for being on the show. Everybody,
Thanks,
don't
Mo.
forget, mash that subscribe button, follow, set up notifications on your phone. Go check out the last episode with Tyler. All that stuff's awesome. We got 3 more coming to you with Tyler, and I already know they're going to be amazing. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Mo.
Hey everybody, it's Mo. Man, I'm having a blast with Tyler Sweatt. He's VP of Growth at Second Front. They are crushing it. They're growing like crazy. Tyler's one of my favorite people that, gosh, we've taught over 20,000, Tyler, but you're one of my favorites of all time. We recounted that story of when we met in the first episode, everybody, on this series. So go back and listen to that if you want to know the genesis story of Mo and Tyler. All right, so Tyler, I'm so excited about what you're going to answer this question because I don't know what it is, and you are so darn good at growth. So here it is. So when you think back to your Grow Big training, reading the Snowball System, years of being a practitioner, of being a value creator, a growth-oriented person, what's your favorite science step or story when it comes to Grow Big training or the Snowball System?
Yeah, God, like whittling it down to one is probably the hardest question you've ever asked me. I might take a little liberty and give you two. I think one is the dynamic meeting prep.
Okay.
I think too many people focus on having a meeting and being excited that the meeting's going to happen, and they sort of get like Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, where they get like really excited. Next thing you know, like a model truck's on fire.
Can I just say that anybody that quotes Tommy Boy is like, you should just come over and Becky and I and you will just sit on the couch. I bet we've watched that movie 50 times. It
Oh
is
yeah,
so
same,
funny. Okay,
same.
keep going.
But think about it. Think how many times you've seen or like been on the receiving end
Yeah,
of a meeting that just goes sideways because
yeah,
somebody comes in and like they've got some script in their head and they're just execute, and they're going. That dynamic meeting prep, one, it's just a good bounding mechanism, right? It's good discipline. The thinking about what happens if somebody new shows up, what happens if somebody I want to be there doesn't show up. It goes long,
yep,
it goes short.
yep,
Also, when you start to introduce that and you make that like a recurring behavior and like a cultural attribute or an artifact of your growth process, it becomes a way you think about meetings,
yep,
and it becomes a way you think. So like I don't necessarily go in and fill the sheet out every time now,
yep,
but I just rolled that out to we just grew our growth team by like two or three more folks in the last month. And I rolled out dynamic meeting prep as a requirement for every
yep.
meeting. And like, it's a thing we're going to inspect. And my number two laughed and was like, we've actually been doing this without the form. I've just been watching how you and your counterpart do it. I was like, yeah, that's exactly the point. Like, this is the artifact of it.
Yep.
So I think it's that one, and
Oh,
ask for the
hold on,
advance.
before you go to the next one, I want to. So some of the audience may or may not know what that is. They might have gotten this. They might be listening to watching the show, but they don't have the book yet or whatever.
Okay.
So let me just say this, and I'll actually share this with you, Tyler, because I don't know that I've ever really shared with anybody outside of Bunnell Idea Group, but the way we design dynamic meeting prep, which for everybody is a form, it's got some really simple questions. You can solidly prepare for a meeting in 10 minutes. If you've got 8 people are going to be there and it's a finalist meeting, it's going to take a few hours because the stakes are high and there's lots of people. But if you're just having a meeting on your own, you can like look through that, think through what you're going to do very quickly. The point I was going to, and it's in Snowball System, and you can download it when you get that, or it's part of our Grow Big.
It's a great way to stitch together a lot of the Snowball System. Like,
yeah, that's right.
That's the nice part about it. Like, it is sort of like the clearing group for the clearinghouse for a lot of the tactical skills.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because it pulls in how do you ask great questions because it's for this meeting. How do you handle the objections you might get because it's for this meeting? Yeah, exactly right. In the Tyler, this is interesting. I think I'll get your feedback on it before we go to your second thing. But the way we design that is to model for a business development meeting, very similar to how a sports team is going to model and prepare for a game. So let me do a compare and contrast. To your point, most people prepare for business development meetings by memorizing some script or a sequence of 72 PowerPoint slides, or I will say this here, and my main point here is this. Well, that's not how a sports team prepares for a game. How in the world would a basketball team know exactly what they're going to do with 17 minutes and 42 seconds left in the second half? Like, you couldn't do that,
Even
right?
Mike Tyson knows not to do that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Exactly. But he's correct. But he's walking into that ring, or the basketball team's walking onto the court. They've got a goal. They've got a way they've framed that in their mind. They know what they're going to do if the other team does this or does that. They've they've planned out, they've done scenario planning to think of all the crazy things that might happen and what they'll do. So that's what we're trying to do in business development
Yeah.
meetings is basically, yes, have a goal. Yes, have a way of framing that goal in a way at the beginning that everybody knows why they're there and why this meeting's a win for them. Those are critical. That's 80% of the value. And then while we're still have that goal as a destination in our mind or the thing we'll all do together, win, 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 how we get there, we're going to handle quite flexibly, just like how a sports team handles it. So anyway, comment on that just for a little bit. I know that's a zinger.
Yeah.
I've never shared it
No,
with you, but
no, you're so my old West Point professors are going to roll over because I might get this wrong. But I think it's an Eisenhower quote, right? It's not the plan. The value's not in the plan. It's in the planning.
Mm,
And it's the actual, and from a military standpoint, like that, this, everything you just said, and like as we were doing the training, this all resonated because you're not planning to like execute some robotic script. You're not
yeah,
Gil from The Simpsons. You know, you're creating a plan to be able to operate fluidly in a dynamic scenario
yes,
because it's going to change. So as much as you can think about the different bounds of the dimension that you're going to operate in,
yep,
you're going to increase your success because you're at least going to have thought about something and
yes.
you're going to be able to pivot based on that or that, whatever you need to do. That's all you're
I,
doing. You're increasing your likelihood of success.
I love it. And because dynamic meeting prep is thinking from the other side, like we talked about in the last episode, everybody go back and check it if you didn't do it. But you're thinking about creating a frictionless buying process. You're thinking
Yeah.
actually about the decision maker as opposed to the old way of like, this is my script and robotically, this is what I will say on page 17 of the PowerPoint. That's thinking about you. Man, the decision maker doesn't care about you. They care about them. We want to
That's right.
fall in love with their problem, not our solution. So by using dynamic meeting prep, we've framed how it's going to help them. We're fluidly going to get there, and everybody's going to win. And you can completely, I'll end it with this, you can completely separate yourself from your competition in the way that you approach meetings, and dynamic meeting prep's the way to do it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, second thing. What's your second thing?
Yeah, second thing is an easy one because it's sort of wrapped into dynamic meeting prep, but it's asking for the advance. So like I told you, dynamic meeting prep, it's an inspectable thing
Yep.
in the growth team at Second Front. And then when we go through pipeline and we're doing our weekly pipeline review, like the actions we're talking about, we're looking at the schedule for the next 2 weeks. We're talking about what advance is being asked for. That then allows us to talk about what assets do we have? What can we give to get? But if you have both of those things, you've now bounded the next leg of the buying process you're trying to move into.
Yes.
And then you're into tactics, which is where you want to spend your time.
Yep.
How can I move an opportunity further along, quicker, at a lower cost to me, higher value to my customer in the pipeline? And that's how we do it right there. Super simple.
Yeah, and the simple act of asking for something is one of the most influential things we can do. You know, you've heard me talk about the Dr. Vanessa Bones research out of Cornell. Love her stuff. She just had a book come out too, by the way. It's sitting on my kitchen table. It's my next in line to read. I'm so excited about it. But she found a face-to-face ask was 34 times more likely to get a yes than an email ask. And 34 times is hard to get our mind around. It's the difference between, in her study, 2 out of 100 people saying yes on email and 68 out of 100 people saying yes, eyeball to eyeball.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have superpowers when we're air quotes in person, when we can see each other. We're massively influential, probably more influential than we think. So back to your point in the last episode of creating a frictionless environment, it sounds like you and your teams are always, you've got an idea of how you can be helpful next. You're asking for it in the meeting. So go a level deeper. Like, how do you ask for things? Specifically, how do you phrase things? How do you scale this across your team? Just go some steps deeper.
Yeah. It's like, not to give a consulting answer out of the gate, but it depends. Like we do a lot of B2B. We do some B2G. We do some sort of partnerships on more go-to-market stuff. So it'll depend based
B2G,
on their buying.
Is B2G government? Okay,
Yeah.
Keep going. Okay.
Yeah. So depending on the buying pattern, or the buying process, depending on where we are and depending on who we're talking to, hey, asking for a demo and like working the schedule of that while we're there. Because like you alluded to. If you've got something scheduled and somebody wants to punt you, they're like, what is it, 80% more likely to offer an alternate time and reschedule instead of completely deleting and declining it.
Yep.
So there's like little tradecraft tricks like that. Will, from a qualification standpoint, like we ask direct questions. Like I said, like we qualify in or qualify out fast, right? Is it a technical fit for what they're trying to do? Do they have the authority? Do they have the budget? Is it a timing fit? We do technical screenings as part of our buying process because we don't want to waste the prospect's time. So before we are even like, hey, let us tell you how awesome our piece of technology is and how it can save you time, we'll do a little bit of that as soon as they're interested and they're like, hey, this is great, we want to buy. We will not let them buy until we confirm that it'll actually fit. It's quick. It's like think about a Google survey, right? Super easy. We fill out the survey form. It's like a 15-minute conversation, but then we're not wasting their engineers' time. We're not wasting their CTO's time. We're not wasting their, and once we get through that, then we're in. And then we're talking about buying levers. Hey, what's more important to you? Is it the length of a license? Is it the money, payment terms? Is it this, that, and then all you're doing, and my team knows, we've got a box that they have free reign to customize in.
Yep.
If it goes outside that box, I've got a bigger box, and I'll help sort of customize. And then all you're doing, you're in a configuration problem. And that's where you want to be. How fast can we get there?
Yeah, and Tyler, I got to say this is going to be so valuable for so many people because I want to be really clear here. Most of our clients, I don't think, have really figured out and just identified or have a 1 30-minute meeting would probably do it with an internal team. Where are the reasons we usually don't win? Well, it's probably one of four things: a strategic fit, they were looking for a certain brand or not; a technical fit, you either have the certain technical knowledge or processes or advice or systems or whatever. There's a timing fit. You alluded to that one. Maybe it's our budgets are frozen right now, or we have to go through a certain process or whatever. And there's something around a relational or cultural fit that maybe you can go deeper on. But you could probably see the secret code there. I went through the Herman Brain Dominance Institute quadrants.
I've still got my HBDI sitting on my. It's always within eyesight of my desk. I pull it out like once a month.
There you go. So like almost all things forward or that get blocked they're going to boil down to those four things. So anyway, you mentioned. Well, why don't you go through each four really quickly and we'll wrap up this episode. Like what would be, not as much for second front because you sort of came to that, but what would be your advice to others? Right? You've been an outsourcer, you've been a professional yourself. Those are the two big areas that a lot of our listeners that would fit into. So what would be typical barriers that you're trying to qualify for that are strategic, technical, timing or process, and relational?
Yeah, so I think process is the most straightforward one because it's, how do you buy? What are the authorities? What are the cycles? Like, do you have different types of money? And you've got to do justifications. Like, I've helped customers write their internal justifications. And like, again, going back to removing friction. If you understand the process, you could probably find a way to make your prospects buying of your stuff easier.
Yep.
Figure out how to do that. From a relationship standpoint, I've always thought about it in like a who stands to benefit from this type of work, and like how can I make the person who's doing the buy look great and help them advance their own status and relationships and sort of WASTA inside an organization. But who are the winners and losers, right? Because usually things are a zero-sum game, and somebody gets a new project. Somebody loses out on some perceived or actual organizational influence. Understanding that will allow you, maybe you apply a little change management, you get people bought in, you get someone's fingerprints on it, and you get a little ownership.
So on this relational one, just to double click on that before we do the last two, it's trying to qualify, is there a big enough win for the constituents, for the decision maker, for the whoever else is involved, that they're actually going to be motivated to keep going?
Yeah. Well, and think about like traditional change management. Like, what's the first thing you want to do, right? Seek early victories. So what A win is not a win is not a win. So like, what's a win to Steve, to Mary, to Bob, to Susie, to the organization? And if you can understand some of that, then it might be a little bit of like the art of telling a story,
Yep.
but it sort of becomes the art of telling a story, which leads you then into, the analytical, like what data matters? How are you measuring value? How are you measuring ROI? And now you see sort of where I'm going with all this. And then it's all right, wrap a bow around it with what's the vision and
Yep.
where is this leading into the future and creating value. And now you've walked all the way around where you need to walk and you've created a mind map for the value proposition of whatever you're trying to sell. It could be a tractor, it could be paper, it could be services, it could be cold fusion, some new piece of technology, and
Yep.
it's the same cycle you
Yep.
got to go through to understand that buyer.
What about a cold fusion tractor that creates paper? That would like.
You just came all the way back to Tesla, like you're studying right now. There you go.
All right, man, this has been awesome. I loved your two things, the dynamic meeting prep, being able to prepare for where you want to go, framing everything in a way that's a win for everybody, fluidly getting to the goal every time, the proper way of preparing. And I loved how you talked about scaling across the team. And then this idea of asking for the advance. And we just sort of went on a, it's strong corollary, using that as a way to qualify too. Really, really powerful stuff. Tyler, where should people go to connect with you? This has been awesome.
Yeah, www.secondfront.com. Learn more about the organization, what we're doing, the awesome team we've got, and some job openings. And then find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, share ideas, be helpful if I can. And thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for being on the show. This is so good. The last couple have been amazing, folks. So go back and listen to those. We got two more coming your way. So make sure you subscribe, follow, notifications are up, all that stuff to follow Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, Mo.
Hey everybody, it's Mo, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. You can feel how excited I am because we've taped and dropped to you already 3 amazing episodes with Tyler Sweatt. He's VP of Growth at Second Front, doing super, super cool, very complicated work. And Tyler, where we're going to go with this episode is we're going to start with this. Tell me of a business development or a growth-oriented moment that you're really proud of.
So I'm gonna give the easy answer, I think, because it's what I'm doing right now. Because if you had gone back, 3, 4, 5 years, the problem we're solving at Second Front has been talked about a lot. It's been threatened to be solved. I don't think anyone had really figured it out. We have figured out how to solve like a really sticky compliance problem with a simple piece of technology, but in a really innovative business model that's allowed us to package and create this really unique go-to-market that has been a ton of fun. And we're just into the J curve on it right now. So it is a ton of fun, but it's how can I take something that's inherently been done through large, bulky government contracts, and it's been complicated and lumpy revenue, and I got to go chase this government sales process for 12 months. What if I deconstructed that completely and was able to spin it around and productize it and go business to business, just like SaaS, where you're doing ARR and frictionless buying and really simple self-service? That's what we've built. So we've completely changed the buying process for something, and it's been a lot of fun.
So I know you well enough, and we talked a lot in the prior episodes about how you like to go learn new things and tackle them. So, as you're basically building something that never existed before. What is it about what you're doing that you're particularly proud of about that? Like, what are you actually
Yeah.
doing day in and day out that makes you think we're really doing some cool stuff?
Yeah. So, we've talked about it a little bit in some of the previous episodes. For the past 10 years, like after I got out of the military, I've been in a bunch of different industries looking at emerging technology and security. And, as you think about emerging tech and security, regardless of the industry, right, there's usually some pretty complicated compliance layers there. I've got to fill out a bunch of forms. Somebody's got to come audit me, whatever it may be. They cost time. I got to hire people for it. When you think about the last few years, more than a few at this point, where I've been in early stage startups or working with venture capitalists, that compliance layer is even more of a burden, right? And it becomes a barrier to entry. It becomes a barrier to entry to hospitality, to space, to whatever, manufacturing. Think about that then from a national security standpoint. It's not just a barrier to entry, it's a don't come here sign.
Yeah.
We don't want you unless you can act like a Boeing. And no startup is going to act like a Boeing because no business should act like a Boeing.
Yep.
From a like how they operate. I get why they do and it makes sense, but an early stage one shouldn't. So where I'm most proud of is we figured out a way to take that don't come here sign and make it a, hey, come through this door. We've taken care of a lot of the problems for you, so that the national security community can take advantage of all of this amazing technology built in Silicon Valley or Austin or Boston or wherever. But so soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines can actually use that type of technology. Because you see on the news, hey, our nuclear warheads are defended by an IT system that uses floppy disks, or all that. It's a real problem. So that's where I get proud. We figured out how to solve a pressing national security problem, but we figured out how to open a market and really allow a whole bunch of new entrants in. And we've been able to do it in a really frictionless way.
Yeah.
Like product end sale, the entire mantra is like no friction.
Amazing. So, we talked two episodes ago about how you love value creation, how you like doing things that haven't been done before, blazing a new trail, so to speak. So when you think about all that you've built, obviously a massive team of people at Second Foot along with you.
All way smarter than me.
That's always good to surround yourself with that. I agree. But dig deeper though. I want to get personal. Like so you're building all that stuff. And I want you to say, from a Tyler Sweatt perspective, from your perspective, what are you personally proud of that you get up every morning, you do something to make what's the shoulder you personally are leaning into this on, and why does that make you proud?
Yeah. It's twofold. One, this is the best team I've been a part of since I took my uniform off in the military, and I'd been part of that team in like a whole bunch of interesting Afghanistan experiences. So like that was a very special team to me. So I get up for the team. I have an unbelievable growth team, unbelievable product team. I think it is honestly about being able to go prove a whole bunch of people wrong. And everyone who said, oh, this isn't possible. Oh, that sounds like smoke and mirrors. Oh, yeah, great. We'll believe it when we see it. And it was like awesome. And I just want that injected into my veins, because all we're going to go do is say, great, like, we're going to see in 5 months, 6 months, and we're going to have solved the bureaucratic and policy challenges. We're going to solve the go to market. Like we've got some big partnerships that are going to start getting announced over the coming weeks. Like like we're proving a ton of people wrong. And that's where I want that. I want something that somebody tells me can't be done. Hey, you can't figure out how to generate recurring and scalable value in that type of a market. Great. I'll be back in a year with proof, and it'll be too late for you to have invested in me. So
I love that. And I'll tell you that's where this particular episode goes, this particular question set goes, is like, what motivates you? And I want everybody to like listen into this moment. It's important of this particular episode is like business development, value creation, growth. It is hard. The headwinds are against you. It's hard to reach out to people you don't know. It's hard to build something that didn't exist before. It's hard to get up every day and keep at it. It's a lot easier to maintain things than it is to create things. And Tyler, you are a creator. You are a value creator. And to get down to the nut of it, of proving people wrong, is really cool. Yeah. So I'm curious about this, because sort of if that's our why, that's your why right now. I've had different whys at different part of my career of like why I want to continue to focus on growth, because it is hard. Hey, can you think of other times in your life where maybe you had different whys or you had different reasons for why you got up in the morning and went at it again?
Yeah, I mean, at its core, like business development, sales, growth, like the thrill of the kill, the hunt. Like I am a very big fan. I do not like doing the same thing every day. Mm-hmm. I get bored really, really, really fast. And if like we've sort of solved and achieved some steady state, and now it's just turn the crank and turn the crank and turn the crank, that's not really going to interest me. Yeah. And I'm transparent about that with everywhere I've ever worked. I'm like, hey, the second we sort of get there, great. I'm not your guy. So there's that aspect, right? Like punching into new markets, learning, like we talk a lot about learning in some of the earlier episodes.
Yep.
Like this all of these different, hey, I want to go hunt in a new industry. Hey, I want to go prove something can be done that somebody said couldn't be. Hey, I want to go validate this hypothesis. I'm learning from all of that. And then that's informing a new or the next why. What am I going to go do? What am I going to get into? Because I'm learning through a series of different experiences, some successful, some not successful. And then it's like, all right, well, what's the next level I want to go try to get through? And it might
Yep.
be a market, it might be a piece of technology.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yeah, and I think the lesson for the whole audience on this one is like know what your why is. Like if I trace back my whys over different times, when I was taking the actuarial exams, I just wanted to know I could pass them. Even at the end, it's like a multi-year process. At the end, I knew I actually wasn't going to use them in my next job because we were going to move me to this role that was more about client growth and retention. And but I didn't matter. I didn't want to quit because I needed to know from me I could pass 24 of these exams that had a pass rate of 35 or 38% each. Two-thirds of the people are failing. I needed to know I could do it. Then moving to this managing consultant role, my why there was not to fail. I
Yeah,
just didn't want to go back.
that's totally fair.
Yeah, and that's a great why. Like that can be, not making a fool of yourself can be incredibly powerful as a
Yeah.
motivator.
Would like to pay the mortgage this month.
And then I got to later levels. Once I got some proficiency and had some success at this business development thing, then it flipped and I realized I wanted to teach others. And then as I started big 16 plus years ago, my why was like to show my daughters that you can blaze a trail and do something for them. They're on their own path now. One graduated and one halfway through school. So now my why is starting to think about legacy. I think when you get old to a certain extent, you always end up at legacy at
Yeah,
some point.
that's fair.
But that's where I'm headed now. So anyway, let's finish up this episode. Have you seen other little whys in your life over time, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like the why. I mean, I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old son, right? So the why of almost everything I do is so I can create a teachable moment and like give them
Yeah.
a vivid particular of something. Hey, don't let people tell you things aren't possible. Hey, it's never too late to go learn something. Hey, like I was fortunate enough, I was in an early stage company. I was able to get to like be part of getting a patent. Like I told you, I'm never the smartest person. I'm usually the dumbest person in any company I'm in. Like I got to come home to my kids and say, hey, look, like I'm 30 something years old. Your dad was able to be part of a team and learn all this great stuff. So to be able to set examples like that,
Yep.
and then to your point about not failing, like everyone will say, hey, there's all these great reasons. Like you also do it because it's fun and you can generate some wealth to go do it.
Yep.
And then you can like take your kids to Disneyland or
Yep.
whatever, or have
Yep.
college fund paid for, things like that. So I mean, those are probably the underpinning for all of it. Um, and then it's something people think can't be done. Like I like to just get out there in uncharted water and swim
That-
around and figure out how
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, I see that with you. Well, let's close out this episode with this. Everybody, just think it's really powerful to figure out what's your why in this season of life, and it's totally appropriate for them to change over time. But identifying that, writing it on a post-it note, sticking it on the wall, whatever. Like, remind yourself why you're getting up in the morning. Remind yourself what the really deep motivation is, and it can be incredibly powerful to keep going and keep striving to achieve and climbing. So. Tyler, people are going to want to connect with you. Where should they go?
Yeah, www.secondfront.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, share ideas, whatever I can do to be useful.
Perfect. Everybody do that. Tyler, thanks for being on the show. We got one more left. The last have been awesome. I can't wait for the next episode. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mo.
Hey, everybody. Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, the 5th of 5 episodes with Tyler Sweatt, VP of Growth at Second Front. And man, have we had a lot of fun. The prior 4 episodes have been so darn good, Tyler. So this is my final one. This is the one, the question we love closing with on the series of 5. You now get the magical chance of recording a video or something around growth, business development, skill development, whatever. You get to record a video and send it back to your prior self. What's in it?
So it's a couple things. And it's lessons I think I knew and I forgot along the way and had to remind myself about.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, right? Like don't fall in love with titles. Don't chase titles. Titles at the end of the day, titles are pretty irrelevant.
Yep.
Um, Emulation is very difficult, but identifying character traits, attributes that you don't want to emulate is way easier and ultimately far more valuable in
Yep.
creating your future self. Um, don't lose sight of the value of saying no. No is probably the most strategic word in your arsenal. It is never used enough. And then you know, don't feel obligated, right? Like to finish with the no, like always be willing to sort of fold. Like if the poker game you've gotten yourself into isn't right for you, be willing to walk away. And don't feel like there's some loyalty you owe to an organization or an employer. Because I mean, I've got a sort of jaded perspective sometimes on that. But as a salesperson, as I look back now, salespeople are the most easily expendable, right? You can 2-year churn them. I can go find a salesperson, and I'm parroting, some bigger a salesperson's a salesperson's a salesperson. You can churn them out. We're going to strap quotas on them. They're going to hit them or they're not, and they're out. Recognize that. You can use that to your advantage. You're your own customer. You're your own client, and you've got to be willing to take care of that all the way through.
What's your advice? I think a lot of our clientele and the people that watch the show, generally speaking, are super nice people. Many of which are introverts or ambiverts, sort of in between intro and extro.
Yeah.
They're just that we generally we work with other 500 organizations. We generally work with really nice organizations. Like the cultures are wonderfully warm, like helpful, collaborative, collegial, all that stuff. So how do you say no in those environments? How do you wind out of things you got yourself into? What's your advice?
Yeah. So I'm like a pretty big fan on being brutally transparent. And like I find people actually really appreciate it. And more often than not, if you're trying to sugarcoat something and sort of dance around it, like you're gonna have a failure to launch or a missed delivery. Because communications, right? It's that famous communication's a two-way street. It's not just what you said, it's how it was received. The easiest way to ensure something is received the way you mean it to be sent is to say it as simply and plain as possible. So, think about it in bullet points and deliver a bullet point. Don't give me a 5-minute sort of winding thing on why.
Yep.
Because like when I have people do that to me, I'll respond and like ask a question and be like, so you're saying this, and it'll be like a 5 to 10 word bullet point. And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, just say that. That's fine. Like, we can work with that. Because then you're diagnosing the problem or the challenge or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
If you
So
don't diagnose it, you can't solve it.
so you're just saying just make it simple. Make the no simple. Here's how.
That doesn't mean you're not nice. You're
Yeah.
actually doing someone a favor if you're transparent and honest and allowing them to understand. You're being nice. You could make an argument that if you're obfuscating your frustration or your discomfort or your inability to do something, you're
Yeah.
ultimately setting the organization up for some type of failure. That's not nice.
Yeah.
That goes back to no, right? Like yes isn't the nice word. Yes is the easy word. And it allows there to be no challenge and no friction, but no friction in a bad way, not no friction in a good way. Like you need friction. Friction creates energy.
Let's do a super tangible example. I love practical examples on the show. What's something that you've said no to in the last week or two? And what was the request? And how did you say no in a really simple, transparent way? And how was it received?
Yeah. So I had a colleague call and ask me to spearhead an initiative that was going to be like a relatively large, publicly facing sort of partnership. That they had this great idea, and I said no. Like that was my answer, was no. And then I provided some context, and I said, hey, the value that would create, I find to be sort of orthogonal for the value we're creating right now. And it would actually probably, would it dilute the value we're creating or complicate? And I was like, it just doesn't fit right now. Like it's a really interesting idea. Like I understand the value of it, but it doesn't fit. And the colleague was like, ah, that's great. I didn't think about it that way. Awesome. That was a 10-minute conversation.
And it was over.
Yeah, and that was it. And then we both moved on to the next thing. Right? Nobody's feelings are hurt. It's business.
You know, my James Clear has a phrase around this that he says, "No is a decision, yes is a commitment." And I love that sentence. No is a decision, because a no. Well, my wife said no to something this weekend that would have been literally, I think, like 100 hours on her part and not directly aligned or not having the value to something. It was really hard because somebody kept requesting and really wanted to do a thing, really wanted to do this thing with Becky and involving her nonprofit. And we scripted hey, here's how to say no about that. And she did. And it was hard because this person's a friend. She's an amazing human being, really wanted to do something that could help the nonprofit, but the effort, the value created just wasn't worth all the effort that it was going to be. So she said no, and it's done. It's done.
It's awesome,
literally,
right?
I think, saved 40, 50, maybe 100 hours and a lot of time and sweat. And it would have, to your point about being nice, that would have ended badly later on had she not said no now, because she really didn't want to do it. It was giving her anxiety and all these other things. So I think a lot of times we don't project a yes out to the end because we just sort of creep into incremental yeses and it becomes this big awful thing, whereas just one definitive no, like you just said, it ends it.
Yeah. And those incremental yeses build up over time and can create all sorts of like negative energy in a relationship or resentment or whatever. I mean, pick your not great word, but all of that bad stuff gets pulled in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's do one more thing. I think you also mentioned your second point was emulation is difficult, but focusing on what you don't want to emulate is important.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say this will be our last question for this episode, but like go back in time, like when have there been times you say, "Ooh, wow, I don't want to do that," and that by lopping off those things, you continue to refine where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean the easiest answer is the military for me. I sort of like a Band of Brothers, right? I had a captain who I forget, was it Strobel, whatever his name is in Band of Brothers, the one who's not well regarded by the men. I had a senior officer like that when I was a lieutenant, and I watched a lot of how he acted, how he treated subordinates, how he treated peers, and just like made notes of I will. So I had a small list of like I will never do this. I will never. I didn't know what I was gonna do per se, but I knew what I wasn't gonna do.
Yeah.
Same thing from a sales standpoint, right? Like I will not close a deal if I do not believe we can deliver value. If I can't look you in the eye and confidently say I can deliver value, we will not close the deal. And that is a hard rule for me.
Yeah.
Like we will not just close the deal to close the deal. We don't misrepresent. Like the sales industry has this terrible reputation because there are folks in it, and I mean it's in any profession, who will do whatever it takes to close the deal. And they're, snake oil salesmen or, smoke and mirrors and all of that. But like a lot of what we've talked about where you hear about the transparency and like when I talk about high velocity in a pipeline, it is just as important to qualify something out as it is to qualify something in the pipeline.
Yep.
And if we get a qualified out wrong, like we do a post-mortem on that because I don't want the wrong types of deals. I don't want to mislead customers. I don't want to waste their time. Because if you treat people the right way, as you're growing in your career and as you're moving around, those are relationships you can reach back into. You're building your own massive network that's built on trust and respect. I have clients I've worked with for over 9 years who in like 4 different companies at this point, and we're still doing work together.
Yeah.
The work might change, but there's a level of trust that's been there that they know if I bring them something, I trust it and I'll put my name on it. And it's not just, hey, I know you have money to buy stuff. Can I put you down for 4 of these widgets?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. And it's the perfect ending. And I think if I wrap up this whole episode, I think what I really grabbed onto about your first 4 lessons in your video that you can now send back to your prior self, you're good to go with the tech and everything. I'll shoot it to you later. But what I really grabbed onto was this power of the opposite and the idea of how do you say no to things? How do you unwind out of something that you had said yes to but need to say no in the future? How do I figure out from what people or an industry is doing that I don't like, because that helps me further refine what I do like. And I think that's just an incredible power to figuring out what you don't want to do, as you emulate others or don't emulate others, what kind of things you don't want to do, projects, whatever, commitments. And by knowing what those are, it
Yeah.
just, you're basically saying, I trust myself to figure out where I'm headed and what I'm going to do. And
And you're
all
making it
doors
easier
open.
for yourself to
Yeah.
figure it out, right, Mo? Like
Yeah.
you're removing some of that uncertainty. So instead of having to figure out like a whole x-axis or y-axis, you're like, no, hey, worry about this quadrant. This is the quadrant we want
Yep.
to figure out.
Yep.
Yeah, you're increasing your likelihood of success just from a simple mathematical standpoint.
Bingo. Bingo. Well, let me leave the audience with this, because it's a super practical way to wrap this up. If you like this idea, all you need to do, pull out a scrap piece of paper, write down everything you're doing now that's not what you want to do. We've all got things. Gosh, I want to get to that project, that thing, that I want to learn that skill, whatever. I'm not getting to it, right? We all have that. So now pull out that scrap piece of paper and write down things that are less valuable than whatever you want to do, right? You'll come up with 3, half, 6, half a dozen, whatever. Then that's your first column. Then in the second column, write down how many hours of year is that taking from you. I did this last week with a class that's in our curriculum now, Tyler. Did it with a class. People were, I would guess the average or median number people were giving was 500 to 600 hours a year when they total up their list. Man, that's like a fourth of a year.
I was just going to say, that's a quarter of your year.
Yeah, yank away, right? 10, 20,
Golly.
15 hours a week, over the course of a whole year, right? And they got so, what was beautiful about it is it's like a beautiful story, because when you tally it up, you can just see faces go, oh my God, what am I doing, right? I want to do all these new grow big things I learned, but I've been doing these things. So that's the low point. But then the beautiful point is saying no to them, winding out of them, freeing up, say 550 hours a year or whatever was on Sue's list or Jane's list or Mark's list or whatever. That is the beautiful part of the story, because by lopping those things off, to cut those things, that means we can climb. We can cut to climb. We can climb to these new things we want to do. And that
I
is
love that.
glorious. So I go through that once a quarter. I know some of my friends go through it monthly. At least once a year, we advise people to do that. Figure out what you're doing that's not as valuable as you want. Add it up. You got to add up the numbers. That's where you get fired up. That's where you realize, oh man, this is too much. And then you use Tyler. Then use the Tyler system of saying, no, we've already covered that, to get out of that stuff so you can do the cool stuff.
No, I love it. I mean, you think about doing that on a personal level. We do it on a team level at Second Front, and once a month we take a look at what meetings have started popping up on the books that aren't, like, we can't convict them of being directly correlated to value creation, and if we can't, boom, get them out. And we have a once every 2 weeks, like, if things need to be discussed, it's our little like growth sprint. You can come there and discuss it, but you can't just be putting on weeks. To your point, it starts to add up. Oh, it's just 30 minutes a week, or it's just an hour a week. Whoa.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I love how you've incorporated that into the team, right? What a super cool thing to do across of a team. That's what we did last week. This is valuable on your own. I think it's even more valuable to do that exact exercise as a team, because everybody gets fired up. They start helping each other about how to say no. You leave with commitments because you looked at your colleague in the eye saying, yeah, I'm going to quit doing that. You have a higher likelihood of quit doing it, if you said that to somebody else. So I love the idea of doing that across the team, Tyler. Well, hey, this has been fantastic. What a great episode. All of them were so good. Thanks for being on the show. Where should people go to connect with you?
Yeah, check out secondfront.com. You see what we're working on. We've got a bunch of content we push out. There's webinars, there's opportunities to meet new people, all that stuff. Happy to be part of that. And then find me on LinkedIn. However I can help, connect, share ideas. And Mo, thanks a ton. This has been a blast, brother.
Oh, it's been so fun. Well, we'll put all that stuff down in the show notes. Everybody, don't forget, subscribe, follow, set up your notifications, all that stuff. Tyler, you were just fantastic. From that moment we met in a class that one of our other facilitators was teaching, I just walked in. I just walked in right when you said something that was like mind-numbingly